What's up, guys? Tim Little, Matt Allen. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin, and welcome back to another episode of our 2024 Holiday Buyer's Guide series. Today, we're covering Ned Rigs.
Ned rig fishing remains one of the staple techniques that every bass fisherman needs to have in their arsenal. We all love those good days, the days where the fish are eaten and we can power fish. But the reality is those other days come, right? There's days that we have got to finesse, and the Ned rig just gets it done. Over the past 5 to 7 years, the Ned rig category has exploded. You know, yesterday we talked about strolling. Strolling is exploding right now. Most of the innovation in Ned rigs has slowed down now, although there's been a couple of baits this year that are just unreal. But the technique itself has stayed so strong, so consistent. It is such a fish catcher that we've still got a gear review dedicated just to this technique.
Yeah, there's so many great baits on the market. So when we were looking at pulling baits and gear for this video, we're like, what are the staples in our fishing? And luckily for Matt and I, we've done a lot of, obviously, fishing, right, around the country, but more importantly, underwater footage. So we get to go back and kind of review, you know, what makes this bait special, or what, you know, why does this bait stand, why does this bait get bit when this one doesn't? And right. So in today's video, we have a ton of success in all of these baits, and yeah, trying to simplify Ned rigs. So let's jump into it.
Go for it.
All right, how do you do a Ned rig video without talking about the Z-Man Finesse TRD? This was kind of the staple, right? This is the bar that has been set. Elastec, high float, super durable. This is the bait that kind of put Ned rigging on the market, as far as I'm concerned, my opinion. You know, the Finesse TRD comes in a lot of great colors, but what really sets us apart is the high float, that Elastec like I talked about, and just having ultra durability. You can catch 50 to 100 fish on one bait, it seems like. Just super, it's a basic bait. You know, some of these other baits we're gonna talk about have some different appendages and styles and stuff, but for the most part, it's kind of like just a dead action. But there are days when that is key, when you need the deal, when you need that dead action bait. So that Finesse TRD, I don't leave home without some in my boat or some in my backpack. It's just one of those baits that's a staple and should be in your arsenal as well.
So that category, that like dead action Ned rig, that category has been shrinking for us as all these little rabbit holes of Ned rig fishing have opened up over the last few years. But there's one other bait that just stands out in that category. So that TRD is the deal, right? You throw it out there and you do nothing with it, and fish just pick it up. It's amazing. And what you saw Tim doing without even thinking about it, stretching it,
oh yeah,
like that's the key to the Finesse TRD. That loosens up the salt in it, and it works better after you stretch those things. Now, the one other bait that's that true no action vertical stance, you just let it soak, is going to be from Yamamoto, that 3-inch Ned floater. The difference with the Yamamoto is that you get Yamamoto colors, right? So I've got some TRD colors that I just will not leave home without, period. I've got some Yamamoto colors, that same thing, I just don't leave home. Electric Shad is one of those amazing colors. But those two baits by themselves are kind of it anymore in that just dead sticking category where it's really shut down. Conditions have really gotten tough. Cold water, fish don't want to respond. You don't need 20 options. Those two will get it done.
Yeah, 100% durability and a ton of great colors. All right, next up for me, I'm going to talk about this guy right here. This is the Missile Baits, the Ned Bomb. But I want you guys to see in this same main body style, but look at that little beaver paddle tail. This thing really shines with light hops. You're dragging, you kind of pop it up, that tail just kind of swims down, or when you just drag it on bottom and there's a little bit of current, that tail's just doing that real subtle action. So on these two baits we talked about before, that real dead action, not a lot going on, having that I'm going to call it a beaver paddle tail, basically. Just down there flicking around, and then when you hop it up or you get real erratic, you snap it up and let that thing fall, that thing just swims down, and it is a killer action. But that's one of my favorite colors too, Tilapia Magic. That's a really good bait. But that Ned Bomb by Missile Baits is another killer bait if you want a little subtle action to your Ned Rig.
So that subtle action, right? That little bit of waggle. Like when that water's truly cold, you want that dead action. But mid-fall, going into winter, where we are right now, still having some waggle in that bait makes all the difference. And we saw it so much in underwater footage, where a lot of these baits came from. We were just comparing baits, right? You'd line 15 baits up, put them underwater, play with them, watch what they did. Then we'd go back and watch the footage, and you're like, oh man, that one stands out. And that would jive with something we'd experienced in our fishing too. Like, that's why we were catching them on that one. Because in your hand, you don't really see it. So these baits that waggle, if you will, we have more of those than we do the dead action baits now. So from X-Zone, we have the 3-inch Ned Zone. I guess I can dig one of them out of here. So that Ned Zone has got a bulbous tail on it. So it necks down, and then it's got that little ball on the end, and that thing is just always moving. And it's interesting. We've seen where fish will come up on this thing to inspect it, and that wall of water that the fish pushes underwater will set that thing to rock in. It's really neat. This particular color, that Violet Secret, cold water. It's the jam. I'm sure we'll be talking more about that a month from now, but that is such a good one.
And the first time I ever saw those baits, the X-Zone baits in particular, was at the Classic a couple years ago, and they had an aquarium, a tank up front, and they had that Ned bait in there, and it was just standing up perfectly, just doing this in the water. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. To get that high float, that, I guess, is it neutral buoyancy?
Yeah.
You know, to get that thing standing and just kind of doing its own action, its own subtle action when you're not even doing anything, the rod tip is really cool. All right, next up for me, talking about the kind of wiggle baits. This one for me is a new one, the Duo Realis. This is the Wrigler ND. This thing, a lot like the Ned, it's kind of that elastec-y. It's not elastec, but it's like that. It's a
stretchy material.
Super stretchy, so very durable. But look how soft this thing is. Super soft, and it's that real high float, a lot like the X-Zone, kind of sits up like this. I noticed this bait fishing, doing some underwater footage, and when I would pop this up, or when I'd reel it back to the boat, it would, like, I guess,
wriggle. It's got a lot going on.
It wriggles back to the boat. It's got a lot of, like, S or snake movement in it. It's a really cool bait. Again, you want to rig it. It's got a bulbous tail, just like the X-Zone, so you want to rig it weight down with that bulbous tail up here, and that thing just sits there and does the wriggle. So that's a really cool bait as well.
And that one has, like, very unique JDM colors. Some of them totally speak to me. Some of them I'm like, nope, I'm good. Yeah. But there are some really good colors in that lineup. Next up, going back to Z-Man. So Z-Man's got the Finesse TRD, right? The standard, the staple, the one that started it all. This is the TRD Fatties. So I'm sure that the guys at Z-Man see what's going on in the market. They see baits that have that motion, right? Elastec is perfect for that. And out comes that TRD Fatties. This guy is a flat poured bait, so flat on one side, but it necks down almost to nothing. It's that similar profile, but it's in Elastec. So super high float, super stretchy and durable. You want to get that salt going, move that thing, get that salt. And if you're a Z-Man guy, if you like fishing the TRD, that gives you that like 4-season fishability where you've got the dead action when you need it, but that Fatty Z gets you the rest of the time. It's a really cool bait in all those same standard staple colors that you would normally throw.
All right, next up for me, kind of switching gears a little bit from more of the traditional Ned Rig baits to more of the Craw style baits. This is the Rains. This is the Ring Craw.
Ring Craw, 2.5 Ring Craw.
It is, Matt turned me onto this bait a couple years ago on bait finesse gear. You were Texas rigging it on a 16th ounce Texas rig weight, but I started playing around with it on an actual jig head, on a Ned head, and this thing works amazingly well in that gin clear water, crystal clear water. You can see those fish, you know, when they're cruising on a big flat. I'm thinking smallmouth up north, right? Cruise on a long flat, and you bomb this thing out in front of them and let it fall. They just kind of swim over there, and if they don't eat it on that first fall, you get a little hop or a shake and they just suck it up. But that range, that ring craw, is a cool little craw profile bait. So if you're looking for a bait that is kind of more realistic or a different profile, that's a good one to start with.
It's got good movement too. For a tiny little bait, it's got good claw kick coming through the water. I've got one more of those baits that have some wiggle to them. From Rains, we have the R&D Fat Worm, which is sort of the opposite of what the name suggests. This little worm, tons of movement, just like the others. I mean, nothing you didn't just see, but the whole bait is much more slender than all of the others. You just said smallmouth. I crushed them this spring smallmouth fishing with this guy. The fish were totally in a funk. They would not cooperate. It was clear water. I could see them. And they just cruise away, right? And I'd throw Ned Rigs at them. They wouldn't respond. I go to this one. It's just a more slender profile. Those fish are in a funk. You get, you know, different conditions, right? Post front. You get cruddy conditions, and that narrowed down, smaller profile that still has that good little pintail motion, like it's doing in my hand, is a fish catcher. It's a standout. And then again, you're looking at a JDM brand, so you get some really unique colors. They've got 2 or 3 colors that aren't available in anything else, and they're fish catchers.
All right, last but not least for me, this is a new one. X-Zone, it's the Stealth Finesse series. This is their Stealth Craw. And out of all these baits, this thing, I'm stoked on. This thing absolutely looks so realistic. I don't know if you guys can see that up close, but paired up to your favorite jig head, this thing is money. Like,
they
just
crush it.
Just the pinchers, I mean, just the detail in this bait. X-Zone did a really good job. Again, having that high float bait, that neutral buoyant bait, that just sits there in a defensive position and just looks so good on the bottom. And then obviously that green pumpkin blue flake is a color that I love. Had a ton of success over the last couple years. That thing right there. Here it is. This is called Big Limit, a little different color. But
that color in that craw looks amazing.
Yeah, really, really excited, and had a ton of success on this guy right here.
I've got a couple left. So in that same lineup, that Stealth Finesse series, there's the Creature. True creature profile, but tiny, right? And these tails get moving. You get slow dragging on bottom. They're back there crawling in the cold water, but you can also fish it aggressively. It works so well on a little Ned head. Just the other day, we were on a spotted bass fishery, and I was just riding back deck, just having a relaxed time, just fishing out the back, not caring what was going on in the world. This is what I was throwing. I took this one off a rod, that same exact bait on that little Ned head. I'm just smashed them. And I was fishing behind 2 other people. It's just a profile. They see a lot of Ned baits. They don't see a lot of tiny creatures coming down the line. It's just a different look, a different vibe, different action, and that pays off in a big way. And then last but not least, from Savage Gear, we've got the Salamander. The Ned Salamander is a favorite bait of mine. It's very similar profile-wise, where it necks down and then it's got that bulbous tail, but it's got a ribbed body, it's got arms and legs on it, and that bait just speaks to me. It's just one that I have crushed them on. And again, it's always key colors. I've got like 2 or 3 colors that I just know I can smash them on, and that's what these buyer's guides are about, right? So in the video description, I'm sure you already know, but we'll say it again, we will link all of this for you. The buyer's guides are designed to help you as we go through the holiday sales, to help your loved ones as they're shopping around the holidays for you. Those video descriptions are very user-friendly to find the things that we've talked about and go straight to Tackle Warehouse. We give you size recommendations, color recommendations, all that stuff to make it as simple as possible. And we will give you our favorite colors in all of these.
All right, let's talk about hooks real quick, and we'll move on to rods and reels. So I have 2 hooks for you. I'll let you do that one.
Sure.
Even though you're the one that showed me this hook. We're going to talk about the Ned Locks and the Ned Locks EWG. So one's an exposed hook, and one is a weedless hook. So you can see right here, here's the Ned Locks. Comparison. And then there is the EWG. We were in the jet boat fishing in the river, and you were fishing this guy because I kept getting hung up with that exposed hook. If you're fishing like flat bottom, sandy, clay, it's not too snaggy, I always go with an exposed hook. A lot of times when you're just down there dragging, especially with these little creature baits and stuff, the little tentacles are just moving, that bait just comes by, the fish comes up and eats it. You don't really feel that tick or that slap. Just kind of loads up, feels like a wet rag on the tip of your rod, and then they turn and they start pulling. That's when that hook penetrates, right? So a lot of times with that exposed hook, they'll hook themselves, especially on these finesse baits. But if I am getting hung up, or it is fairly rocky or lots of wood, stuff like that, brush piles, that's when I'm going with the Ned Locks, the EWG. You can see right there, it is exposed, but it's fairly weedless, extremely weedless.
Totally weedless.
And you don't really have to jack. You don't really
it
have to jack
them. It has a shockingly good hookup
Yeah,
ratio.
You don't have to go through a lot of plastic to bury that hook, but that is a killer way to fish a Ned rig in situations where you need to be weedless.
Nobody likes getting snagged, right? That's a bummer. But nobody likes getting snagged in a river, in current, while you're drifting, right?
Yeah.
That came from necessity, because when you break off, you're drifting fast, you'll break off your whole leader, you might break off a bunch of braid. It's terrible.
Yep.
So that came from necessity, and then we were like, man, our hookup ratio is the exact same. There's no downside to this, and that's become the main thing that I throw a Ned rig on anymore, and I used to be all exposed hooks. Now, one other head for you from BKK. This is the Silent Chaser head. There's so many Ned heads on the market, and there's a lot of them are good. We're just looking for things that are different, right? And the Silent Chaser is really refined. It's got an excellent hook in it, like a scary sharp hook, an amazing bait keeper on it. And then the biggest thing is that the head, and I'm not going to tear this pack open, but the head, you won't be able to see it anyway. It's ribbed. Okay, there's ribs that go across the head. When you're dragging on hard bottom, my contact is significantly better with that ribbed head. You can feel everything. You know exactly what that head is doing. When you touch rock, you know it. And that connection to the bait just makes it that much easier, because when you're Ned rigging, there's not a lot of motion most of the time, right? And if you're not getting bit a lot, it can get in your head. You're just like, what am I doing right now? But when you've got that extra point of contact and it's really dragging those ridges on something and you're more connected, it's way easier to keep your head in the game and fish that thing all through the day.
Yeah, we've caught some big fish on that hook and didn't bend out. I've been extremely impressed with that. All right, rods and reels. You want...
You go.
Okay.
Let's go from the top down.
Top down. All right. When you're fishing finesse, fishing and you need bottom contact sensitivity, that's where Matt and I will teach. That's where you invest your money, right? When you don't necessarily need the most sensitive topwater rod. It's all visible, or what, you get the idea. But when you're dragging, like Matt's talking about, feeling the ridges or using those ridges to feel that rock. That's
not happening on, heavy fluoro on a $50 rod.
Right. So that's when spending that money on don't go out of your budget, but if you can afford it and you want the rod that we have found works the best in this situation, it's their NRX Plus 821 NRR, Ned Rig rod. This thing is extremely light. I feel like it's lighter than my drop shot rod. It's extremely light, and extremely sensitive. What's special about this rod is even though the tip is so light, the rod is so light, it does have some horsepower. It's got some backbone
you can lean
to
on it.
So you can catch some big fish on this light rod. And then again, paired up with a X-Sense, that's a 3000 braid to leader. I don't know that it gets more sensitive than that. It is stupid sensitive. If you're not used to a rod this sensitive, when you go out or you get to fish with one for the first time, you start setting the hook on every rock that you feel, right? Because you feel
everyone does it.
You're swinging and missing. But if you can afford it, that is the top of the line in our opinion.
All right, now from there, let's talk like bang for the buck, right? Dollar for dollar, I don't think this combo can be beat. So the NRX Plus is it, right? That is the standard of lightweight sensitivity. It's unbelievable. But if you don't want to make that spend and you still want to experience high end, Shimano X Prides are drastically more sensitive than their price suggests. Bang for the buck, they're amazing. So this is the 610 medium light. And then I have that paired up to a 2500 size Vanford. This is the new Vanford, unbelievably smooth. And then same thing, braid to leader. That braid to leader takes any rod and goes one more step in sensitivity. This truly feels like a high-end combo without the high-end spend. Now, if you hold one in each hand, oh, you can tell the difference. But if you're not holding an NRX in your other hand, this is so sensitive. It absolutely gets the job done in any situation. And day in and day out, X Prides are what we fish a lot of the time. And then on the budget end, on budget rods, there's so many options. And there are big differences between them. With budget rods, we're looking for sensitivity and durability. Those are the big things. And weight, right? Weight is a big deal. From St. Croix in the Bass X line, we've got the 610 medium light. Again, much like the X Pride. We have that guy paired up to the Daiwa. This is a killer combo on a budget. I mean, all in, not on a sale, you're like just over 200 bucks. Which anymore is on a budget. It really is. Tackle has skyrocketed, but that combo, day in and day out, 8-pound fluoro and just send it, you'll be just fine. You can go to braid to leader, your sensitivity will go up even further, but even just on straight fluoro, it is a great fishable combo.
Yeah, that Bass X is a cool rod. When I made that kind of movement, you're like, even weight. A lot of the inexpensive or cheaper rods just feel kind of cumbersome in the hand.
Yep.
And when you're dragging and you want that sensitivity, you want that feel, I don't want my hand or my arm to feel heavy, right? So that Bass X, St. Croix did a really good job eliminating that kind of cumbersome feel at more of a budget price point rod.
Yep. All right, guys, with that, we are going to wrap this one up. Tomorrow, we are continuing 7 days a week, so we will see you again tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, we are talking drop shot, and we'll just keep right on rolling from there.
Yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys tomorrow talking about drop shot fishing.